Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Network. The topic of this is a special topic. If you've been following along all through the month of July, we partnered up with my friend Bucky 749, the American Samurai, and his brother Jeremy, and we're doing Jeremy's Christmas in July. Hence the theme of this one. We're going to be reviewing WWF, not quite yet WWE, Monday Night Raw from December 24th, 2001. And you'll see why I picked this. Obviously, if you can tell by the date, it was a show that aired on Christmas Eve. But you'll see why as I get along exactly why I picked this show. If you haven't seen these shows before, we rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And this is where we go back and we review some of the classic material, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes campy, that you could find, formerly on the WWE Network, now on Peacock. With that going right in, I am going to mention one more thing. There are a lot of segments on the show, and they all kind of tie into one overarching story. So I'm going to save my ranking for the segments to the very end. That way we can cut a little bit of time, because this is probably going to be a long video, because if you remember watching Raw at that era, they tried to pack a lot into a short time period. First up, we get The Rock coming out in Miami in his Miami Hurricane jersey. Basically does a rendition of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, tying into our theme. Kurt Angle comes out. What was scheduled to be a match between The Rock and Chris Jericho for the Undisputed Championship turns into a three-way for the main event. Pretty good opening segment. Like I said, I'll save my ranking on all the segments to the end because there is an overarching story. From there we go to one of two parties going on. This is during the era where Vince McMahon and Ric Flair were co-owners of the WWE. So we have Vince McMahon's Christmas party, which has Santa Claus being portrayed by Bubba Ray Dudley, going by Bubba Claus. And we start to get problematic. There's a few things on the show that are kind of, with what's going on right now with Vince McMahon, a little questionable. This is at the tail end of the Attitude Era, so it does make sense they were pushing the envelope. We get the reindeers, which appear to be strippers, or models that are very lightly stated to be strippers. They don't say they're strippers, they don't say they're prostitutes, but it's obvious with the way they talk to them and how it's implied what they're supposed to be. But anyway, and there's obviously a stripper pole that they all go to dance on. So that's our first party. We'll get into the other one when we get there. First match of the night, we get Rikishi versus Test. This was during the time where Test was in an angle where he was abusing referees and getting disqualified. Very short match. He does get disqualified because he pushes down Tim White, who then hits him, and then he hits Tim White. Rikishi makes a save. Rikishi does pick up the win by disqualification. This was maybe 2 minutes, and I could tell you by watching this back, I didn't remember the Test referee angle, so that tells you how good the angle was if I don't remember it. I usually remember even some of the most mundane stuff like Head Cheese or Duke the Dumpster Drozy or all kinds of silly stuff, Radford. But I couldn't remember that. I didn't remember this happening. Anyway, I'm giving this a 2. Like I said, there's not much here. I like Rikishi, I like Test. Just didn't work for me. Next up, we go to the second of the two parties in the backstage segment, the Flair Party. And from hence on, I'm going to refer to the segments as Flair Party and Vince Party, which we get Tajiri Claus. which is obviously Yoshihiro Tajiri in a Santa Claus suit. The highlight of this is that the wrestlers in this party talk to Big Show about doing an impression. He does an impression of Hulk Hogan. Again, this is about the time that Big Show started doing like an impressionist gimmick, which I remember, obviously. That wasn't great. It wasn't a great gimmick, especially for a guy like Big Show, but it was memorable. From that, we go back to the Vince party, where Billy and Chuck give each other their headbands, which everybody knows Billy and Chuck is wearing the Billy and Chuck headbands. Kind of felt a little bit more Dude, Where's My Car with the way they were talking to each other, and I don't know if that movie was out before this. I know it was right around the same time, so I'm guessing that was in the lexicon and that's what they were playing with. They give each other their headbands that say Billy and Chuck. Taz comes in, kind of stirs up the pot about the two parties. Then we get Moolah and Mae Young come into the party, which I love Moolah and Mae. Anytime they're on the screen, they're just awesome. From that, we go to the next match of the show. Billy and Chuck going up against the APA. This one surprised me a bit. I know this was very on in the Billy and Chuck run, and I guess they were probably building him, but I didn't really expect them to beat the APA here. And they did, obviously. Billy and Chuck pick up the win. This was a good, solid match. It wasn't the best match I've ever seen. It's not the best match that any of these four guys have had. But definitely a solid match. I'm giving this one a 3. Like I said, Billy and Chuck pick up the win on this. Pretty good segment altogether, or pretty good match altogether. Next up, we have Rob Van Dam, who's going to look for Y2J, Chris Jericho, in his locker. When he gets there, Jericho's not there, but Lance Storm is. Which leads us to basically them setting up a match to look for a little bit later on, which is followed by another segment from the Flair party, where Arn Anderson comes and Steve Austin comes, which is funny, because Flair seems to be more happy that Steve Austin's there, which I know he's the biggest star of the era. However, you're more happy about this guy than you are your best friend. And I know they've had a falling out since this, but everybody knew that was Rick's best friend. You would think he would have a bigger reaction to seeing his best friend there. Anyway, I digress. From those segments, we go into the Rob Van Dam versus Storm match. What can I say? These two guys are awesome. And watching this back, there was a huge missed opportunity, because Rob Van Dam was as popular, if not more popular, than anybody on the card, anybody on here. He got just as good of a reaction as Austin. He got just as good of a reaction as The Rock. A better reaction than a lot of other Hall of Fame type talent on here. Not knocking any of those guys, but Rob Van Dam was so hot right now. I really wish they would have gave him a run with the Universal title at this point. He doesn't get the title for about another 5 years, and it feels like by that time, I'm not saying it was late, and I'm not saying that wasn't one of the great moments in that era of WWE, but I feel like they should have built him here, and Rob would have been, better used for this, in my opinion. Rob does pick up the win, Rob Van Dam. I'm giving this a 5. I thought it was an awesome match. We go back to the Vince party, where we have Test kind of being a little bit inappropriate with Terry Runnels. He has a mistletoe trying to get him to kiss her. Then we have Sharmell interviewing Maven, talking about Tough Enough 2. He was the winner of Tough Enough 1, which kind of brings out Booker T and the Boss Man, who Booker T feels like he was, because Maven said something the week before, was the infamous Booker T, Steve Austin grocery store fight. Booker feels like he was slighted by Maven, setting up a match for later in the show with Booker T versus Maven. From that segment, we get a Tori Wilson versus Stacy Keibler eggnog match. Okay. I know this was objectifying. I know And they did a bunch of stuff like this, mud matches, jello matches, whatever. This is the same kind of thing you would see at a strip club. I was entertained by this. I can't say I wasn't entertained. I thought it was fun. It didn't feel as creepy as some of the other stuff, like the strippers and the Vince McMahon party, which that leads to something, we'll get there. It felt a little bit more innocent, and it felt a little bit more, I don't want to say wholesome, because we are talking about basically a match to show off how good the women look. Tori picks up the win in the eggnog match, which they're wrestling around in like a kiddie pool filled with eggnog. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not a great match, but it is a great segment. And I think both the women are beautiful. I'm giving it a 5. I know. Come at me. It's not the best. I'm not saying it's the best thing you'll ever see. I'm saying for entertainment purposes, it's a 5. Because they did great with what they had. We go back to the Vince party, where he's talking to Jericho, where Stephanie McMahon comes back. This was off the heels, basically, of a month before that or so. We had the culmination of the invasion angle, and Stephanie's trying to get back in the good graces of Vince. She ends up crying. Very poorly acted, in my opinion. And I've seen Stephanie do much better backstage segments, so I'm not ragging on Stephanie. I don't know that she put her all into this. It was very fake crying, very fake sadness. I don't know. Just a little bit down on that segment. Next up, we have a match for the European Championship. Christian versus Hurricane. This is one of my favorite theme songs of all time. This is when Christian had the falling pyro, the falling gold pyro, and his theme song was the Christian, at last. And I can't sing it. I'm losing my voice trying to sing it. I can't get that high. I'm sorry. The great music. This was my favorite Christian theme. I love the theme he used in TNA, which is kind of remixed for what he's using in AEW now. But I love this theme. This is one of my favorite wrestling themes of all time. Christian picks up the win in a very solid match. I'm giving this one a 4. Next up, we go back to the Flair party, which has Taz coming in, also stirring up the pot, saying that the Vince party was saying that their Santa Claus is better, which is going to set up a match a little bit later on. And the main reason why I picked this, because we have a Santa Claus versus Santa Claus match coming up. So we're going to see a match between Tajiri Claus and Bubba Claus. After that, we get the payoff of the Booker T versus Maven segment. Booker T has Big Boss Man coming to the ring with him. I don't know if they did that for a long time. I don't remember that pairing. It may have just been a one-off because they were at the party together. Very interesting, though. I would have loved to see Big Boss Man continue to be Booker T's heavy or his muscle. Booker picks up the win. Fairly decent match. I'm going to give it a 3. Coming from that, we get into the match of the Santa Clauses, Tajiri Claus versus Bubba Claus. I love this. This was awesome. When you look back at the good things of the Monday Night Raw, Monday Night Wars, Attitude Era, whatever you want to call this time period, it's segments like this that made it really good. Yeah, they were goofy. Yes, it was silly, but they had two guys that were awesome wrestlers that didn't have to take it as seriously all the time. They could put a little bit of comedy, put a little bit of fun on a show like this. And it didn't feel like it was forced. It felt like two guys that were just out there having a great time. Bubba has Devon with him. Tajiri's out there. Taz comes out, distracts the referee. Tajiri does the mist on Bubba, which ends up getting him the win. By the way, one of my favorite finishers of all time, the Poison Mist or Asian Mist or whatever you want to call it. I love it. I love the whole lore of it. Look it up. It's very interesting that what the different color mists mean. So awesome. Each one of them has a different property and a different meaning and a different use. And my favorite thing was when a guy like Tajiri or Muda would use a mist as one color early in the match and then later in the match have it be a different color. And then sometimes they'd even switch back and do two switches of the colors. I just thought that was awesome. It's the one wrestling move that I would love to learn is doing the Asian or poison mist. I'm giving this a 5. Very highly entertaining segment. Very, very good match as well. So I enjoyed that so much. Coming from that, we go to the Vince party again. He has Kurt Angle there, basically saying that he's the insurance factor. Then we get Mae Young, who's drunk, gets up to start stripping, which clears out the party. We go to a package for The Undertaker, talking about taking out the Hardy Boys and Lita, which, wow, it's funny watching this now, knowing how far they would all go, because this was very early in the build to the Hardy Boys being bigger than just, and not saying that being just tag team legends was great, this was the start of them building into being something much bigger. Really interesting video. I don't think we'd ever see a video again in this era of one of the top male wrestlers beating up or power bombing a valet off of a stage. But you might, I don't know, I might be wrong. We close out the last of the party segments where we're back at Vince McMahon's party. It's just him and the Stooges there with Mae Young. The Stooges seem to be loving the Mae Young thing. I love the Stooges. Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe, if you're not familiar. They are so funny. They were great at this time. Again, another one of those little things intrinsic to this era that made it such fun to watch. Other than the matches, and yes, there were a lot of misses. The Attitude Era wasn't all sunshine and roses. But when you have stuff like this is the stuff we remember, this is the stuff that we like. Steve Austin comes in, kind of attacks everybody, and as Mae pulls down her underwear, Steve puts Pat Patterson in the area where he's basically laying down looking up at Mae Young. That's the best I could say about it. Just a great segment again. This is, again, what I love about the Attitude Era. The stuff that I really liked was goofy stuff like this. Matches, yes, there were great matches, but this stuff is what kept you tuning in. We go to the main event of the show, which is Chris Jericho defending the Universal Championship versus The Rock and Kurt Angle. This was an absolute banger of a match. I mean, how can you go wrong with Jericho, Angle, and The Rock being in the main event, especially this time frame? I thought it was awesome. Jericho does manage to eke out a win here. I'm going to give that a 5. Like I said, it was a great, great showing. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, we're going to take all the segments to 2 different parties because, like I said, it seemed to be an intertwining storyline going all through the show. For all of the backstage segments between the Vince party and the Flair party, I thought there was some really good stuff there. A little bit of cringe in the very beginning, but setting up the strippers sets up Mae Young going up to strip. So the payoff made it feel okay, I guess, if you want to say that. I just thought it was really good. I'm giving all the segments a 5 because they were highly entertaining. Overall, I'm going to give the show a 5. There was a lot of stuff on here I really liked. It's a show I definitely recommend going back and watching. I forgot to mark the episode number when I wrote my notes that I'm looking at, which I have a cheat sheet of notes that's right behind the camera, which is why you'll sometimes see me stare a little bit off. But it's going to be in the description, the episode number and season number, where you can find this on Peacock. But it's from December 24th, 2001, if you're going to look it up somewhere else. I know in other parts of the world, you still have the WWE Network, so I don't know if it's still marked, if they mark it as seasons there now, or if it's still marked as by years as it used to be. All in all, like I said, a very enjoyable show. I'm giving it a 5. I thought it was awesome. The reason I picked it was for the Santas fighting each other, which it came down, and I mentioned this in a comment in one of my other videos. It came down between this and a Raw from 2012, which we may still revisit since July is still going on. But I picked this because I thought it was there's a little bit more, especially with the Santa Clauses fighting. With all that being said, if you made it this far, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, share the video. If you made it to the end, let me know you made it all the way to the end. Who do you think was a better Santa Claus? Let me know down in the comments, either Tajiri Claus or Bubba Claus. With all that being said, I want to say a big shout out and check out, there's going to be a link to his channel here. My good friend, the American Samurai, his brother Jeremy. Once again, I am so honored that they invited me to be part of Jeremy's Christmas in July. He's doing some great stuff over on their channel. Go check that out. I mean, I highly recommend it. He's a great guy. Jeremy's a great guy. Check their videos out as well. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of It Came From the Network.